The only one I could come up with, which I've probably used before, but it's about an old elderly father living alone in the country, and it's getting to the time of year, which is in his part of the country right around Father's Day, where he'd like to plant his vegetable garden. But the ground is too hard, and he's really too old to do it himself, and his only son had always helped him with it in the past, but his only son was in prison for robbing a bank. So he wrote to his son, he said, "Dear Jake, been very depressed lately because it looks like I won't be able to plant my vegetables this year. You know how your mother always loved planting this time of year, but I'm just too old to do it myself. I know if you were here, my troubles would be over. I know you'd be happy to dig that plot for me. Love, Dad." Well, a few days later, he gets a letter from Jake, from his son. It says, "Dear Dad, don't even try to dig up that garden. That's where I buried the money." Well, the very next morning, the FBI comes out, all the local police officers. They tear up that whole garden area, just dig the heck out of it, everywhere. And then they don't find anything. They apologize to the old guy and leave. Well, a day or two later, gets another letter from his son. It says, "Dear Dad, happy Father's Day. Go ahead and plant that garden now. It's the best I could do under the circumstances." A clever son. Well, it's the solstice this week, too. It's Father's Day today, and it's the summer solstice on Friday, June 21, first official day of summer, longest day of the year, day of longest light. That word solstice comes from Latin, sol sistere or something. It means sun stands still. The days seem so long that people, it's like the sun is standing still today. And down through history, it's always been hailed as a time of powerful time, a time of prophecy, a time for healing, a time of fertility, just a time of great power and mystery in our midst. And I think that's something to celebrate. We're going to have, of course, a gathering here at the church on Friday. If you feel like honoring the solstice, come and join us. We're going to be drumming from 6:30 to 7. We're going to bring a lot of drums and percussion. And then some music about healing from 7 to 8. So if you're out and about, do join us on Friday. Down through history, there have been lots and lots of solstice festivals and celebrations. I remember reading about this one a couple of years ago that I thought was interesting. In the Slavic and Celtic tribes of Europe, they celebrated solstice with bonfires. And according to one source, in one of the traditions, pairs of lovers would jump over the luck-bringing flames. And it was believed that the crops that year would grow as high as the lovers were able to jump. Interesting theory. The fire's power was also reputed to banish evil spirits, and that it was believed that those bonfires on the solstice would boost the sun's energy so that it would shine powerfully all through the growing season, ensuring a good harvest. There were a lot of important structures built to honor the solstice. Stone structures and so on, stone monuments linked to the solstice, often involving a sighting across stone cairns where you could see the sunrise at a certain spot. I remember visiting Stonehenge as a college student years ago. Anyone ever been to Stonehenge in England? It goes back to it was built between 3000 and 1500 BCE. These concentric stone circles lined up in this, and they're huge. You can't imagine how they managed to do that. And they aligned in a certain way so that you can see the sunrise on the solstice in a certain direction, looking along the side of those stones. There's other structures like that, many still standing around the world. There's one in Wyoming, Sheridan, Wyoming, called Bighorn Medicine Wheel. Very similar thing. There's a sighting cairn outside the main wheel that lines up perfectly with the center of the wheel. And along that line, you can see the sunrise at the summer solstice. And you can sight, there's another sighting cairn across which you can sight 3 dawn rising stars at the summer solstice. It's fascinating. So it's really a reminder, the summer solstice is a reminder of the mystery and power of the universe all around us that we live in, that we're part of. That seems to be the common thread in all those traditions, is a sense of wonder, of awareness of powers, mysteries beyond our understanding. that are inspiring, that are empowering for us. Hamlet's quote from Hamlet, Shakespeare said, "There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy." That's exactly it. That's the solstice awareness. There are more things in heaven and earth than we can fathom. A sense of mystery. That's an important awareness to be in, I think, especially if we want to experience anything new in our lives. Any healing, any overcoming, any abundance, any movement into newness in any way. We need to be in that place of awareness of great powers and mysteries beyond our current understanding, always vaster than our current understanding. There are more things in heaven and earth. I had a contemporary phrasing of that this past week while I was thinking of ideas to share with you today. There was an AT&T van out on the street just a couple doors down, and their new motto, apparently on all the AT&T vans, says, "Rethink the possible." Rethink the possible. Isn't that lovely? That's the solstice awareness. There are more things in heaven and earth. We don't know the limits of possibility. We don't know what's possible and what's not. Jesus said all things are possible for the one who believes. A little bit of hyperbole, maybe, but on the other hand, we don't know the possibilities as well as we think we do. We need to rethink the possible. Remember always there are more things in heaven and earth. Jesus was certainly, like all our great spiritual teachers and way showers, was all about awakening that kind of solstice awareness that that more is possible than we believe, than people around him believed. There's a wonderful, there's so many stories in the scriptures about his teachings and healings, but just one wonderful one from Mark chapter 2. There's a story about how it was reported that he was home, and so people started coming, and they filled the place. There was no longer room for them, not even in front of the door. There were crowds of people coming out to be around him. And some people came bringing a paralyzed man, and they couldn't get in the door, so they made a hole in the roof and dropped him down on a mat. Do any of you remember that story? It's a wonderful healing story. They removed the roof above him, and after having dug through it, they let down the mat on which the paralytic lay. And Jesus is amazed by their faith. And he says to the paralytic, "I say to you, stand up, take your mat, and go to your home." And he stood up and immediately took the mat and went out before all of them, so that they were all amazed and glorified God, saying, "We have never seen anything like this." We have never seen anything like this. There are more things in heaven and earth. Rethink the possible. Rethink the possible. I just think that was a powerful account of what was going on everywhere he went, with his greater awareness of the power of God in him, his sense of deep communion with that. The Father and I are one. He had such a deep sense of that. He was able to demonstrate more and challenge people's awareness everywhere he went of what they thought was possible. People who believed they could never walk again, never be healed. People who believed that they were always going to be sick, always be shunned, and he would make them rethink the possible by what he revealed, what he demonstrated, what he showed them about how to live and how it's possible to live. That's really the solstice awareness, I think, what it's all about. And I think that's maybe something helpful to think about as we go into our solstice experience this Friday. Maybe there's a need for us in some way to remember there are more things in heaven and earth, that we don't know where the limits are, and to rethink what's possible. Are we so sure we know what's possible for us, for others, for our world? There are always greater possibilities than we can imagine. And what a blessing it is when that's revealed to us, or we're reminded of that there are more things in heaven and earth. How do we get that reminding, that realization? How does it come back to us? I think we have opportunities all the time. For me, it happens often, that awareness that there are great mysteries and powers all around me, and more is possible than I think. Often through nature. I bet it's that way for some of you too. Experiences in nature, time spent in nature, witnessing or experiencing natural wonders. It just reminds us what an amazing, mysterious universe this is, with powers at play beyond our understanding. a couple years ago, I know I talked about it a lot at the time, but we went to the total solar eclipse a couple of years ago. We traveled to Illinois to be in that, what do they call that? That swath where you can see the full eclipse. We wanted to be there. And I had seen a YouTube clip about it, which made me realize it's quite different from a partial eclipse, and you've got to see one. You just got to be there. And it was amazing. It was amazing for those 2.5 minutes when the total eclipse happened. There was a quality of light in the air all around us we'd never seen before. There was a 360-degree like sunrise, like all around us, the horizon all around us. The birds kind of started making unusual sounds in the trees. Everything was like very different. It was a reminder, wow, there are mysteries in the universe we can't fathom. I don't understand how this is possible. And there's an order to this. There's to this mystery and how the universe operates. That reawakens often, things like that in nature. Or last year we went down to, just in southern Ohio, to witness the fireflies down there and saw thousands and thousands of fireflies, and ones that, like, called Chinese lanterns, that stay lit for 5 seconds as they go across the sky. Reminders of the magnificent mysteries that abound around us that we forget with our noses to the grindstone and with our focus on the issues and challenges we're dealing with in the day-to-day. There are opportunities all the time. I remember it's a kind of a grandfatherly story seemed appropriate to share today, and I might have before. When I was a real little girl, we had the opportunity of going to my grandfather's tree farm in upstate New York, kind of Finger Lake area, those of you who know upstate New York, Bath, New York, Hammondsport, right around there. And he had a 150-acre tree farm up there. And he had built, he dug a pond, and he had built that place practically by hand way back when. And this was maybe 1961 or so. I have this very vivid recollection of a time he took a break. He was always working, but he took a break from whatever he was doing to show me and my younger cousin. We were the youngest and most irrelevant of the 12 cousins that went up there. And he said, have you seen the springs that feed this property? And he took us into a field and brushed aside. We didn't know anything was there. And brushed the brush aside and shrubs and pulled them back and pointed to this water there, this beautiful clear water, surrounded by some stones. He said, this is one of the springs. Feeds the pond, makes this property possible. Reason why I put this farm here. There's another one down by the pond. There's another one in the back field. I'll show you those another day. You remember where this is? It's important to know where this spring is. Well, I was 8 tops. Didn't mean much to me, except it resonated with me. This is important knowledge. And there's mysteries here. There are resources here I did not know about. There are well springs around that I didn't even know about that are important, that nourish us, that feed us. Solstice awareness. A little solstice awareness dawned there. There are mysteries beyond my sight. More things are possible. There are more things in heaven and earth. To teach that and to, like my grandfather did for us, to share that understanding with others, it's a great blessing. And I think it's something that we share among us, don't you? Whenever we have a sense of more is possible and we communicate that idea to another, what a rich gift that is. I was thinking, really, the story of unity is kind of rich with solstice mystery. Myrtle Fillmore had to rethink the possible. She'd been ill with TB her whole life. They were a struggling family. She was ill all the time with all kinds of infirmities. They were going to a lot of spiritual teachers and way showers, going to lots and lots of doctors, couldn't get better. And then she heard something at a lecture, that you're a child of God, you do not inherit illness, not from God, if you're a child of God. And she worked with that. And it helped her to rethink the possible. And she began to pray and meditate daily and to work with that idea that it's not, she didn't inherit that as she'd been told her whole life. She wasn't stuck with TB her whole life. More was possible than that. And she began to improve through daily prayer and meditation and working with her consciousness and her thoughts. And her husband started getting interested. Myrtle was first, and then Charles thought, looks like more is possible than I thought. That's always the dawning. More is possible than I thought, to rethink the possible. And he began to really apply himself to study and to writing about it and to working with it himself for healing, for a greater understanding. They began to have a prayer group in their home every evening. I was always impressed with that idea that they gathered at 9:30 in their home every evening for prayer with friends and neighbors. 9:30, I'm pretty much done. But at 9:30 for them, they sat down to prayer as a community, and they started to call it Silent Unity. And that's sort of how it began. And others began to feel better and to experience some healing and improvement in their own lives. Others began to rethink the possible, to begin to believe, I'm seeing this in Myrtle, I'm seeing it in Charles. Now my neighbor is doing better, is experiencing greater prosperity, is feeling better physically. More seems to be possible than I thought. That's always the dawning idea, and we can remind one another of that, and how exciting that is, what a gift that is. Myrtle Fillmore and Charles Fillmore, and how that spread from them. More and more people rethinking what was possible, realizing there were more things in heaven and earth than they had dreamed of. Even in Myrtle's passing, which I've always hailed as, that's the way I want to go, sign me up for that way of passing out of here. She went around to her desk in Silent Unity and all those who worked there answering prayers through the mail. And she said goodbyes to everyone. She explained to everyone she'd be going soon, that she could do her work better now from the other side. I don't know what she knew by that, but she was clear on that, and it was her time to depart. And she went home and took to her bed and was gone a couple of days later, peacefully. I don't know what they called it, I've forgotten. They did put some medical label on it. Those medical labels changed from one generation to the next. I don't know what it was they called it at that time. But she knew she was going. She went consciously. She said her goodbyes. She knew her soulful journey would continue beyond our sight. Others must have looked at that and heard about that and thought, wow, more is possible than I thought. Even about dying, more is possible than I thought. That's the solstice awareness, it seems to me. And I think that is a way of experiencing the summer solstice in a powerful way, to remember what it means, that there are more things in heaven and earth than we can track or explain, and more things are possible than we can imagine, no matter where we are, or what we're experiencing, or what's happened to us before, or what we fear might happen in the future. More things are possible than we can imagine, and that's something to celebrate for the summer solstice, I think. So how about this as a very simple affirmation, right out of the mouth of Jesus of Nazareth. All things are possible. Let's say that together.
All things are possible.
Let's take that truth into prayer for a moment and affirm it deep in our minds and hearts. We do not know the limits of possibility. So whenever we become certain we know, we should discount that idea and remind ourselves there are more things in heaven and earth than we can explain and than we know. We know there is great mystery and power at work within and all around us. We know powerful healing energy has been flowing in us always and is now and will continue to do so. And that guiding wisdom rises up in us, no matter what circumstances or challenges we might be facing. A path is lit before us that we can walk in peace and plenty. So we come out of this time of prayer with gratitude, knowing God is with us and all is well. And so it is. Amen.